Hyde Seek is a 2022 free-to-play mobile game, hear me out okay, developed by Mason. Judging by the low numbers this game is making online, I'm assuming none of you know what this game is, so I'll briefly explain it. Hyde Seek has just one story campaign. No multiplayer modes, no daily or side quest grinding, no gacha mechanics, no decoration feature, none of that mobile typical stuff. This game is literally just the main story divided into 100 on average 7-minute long episodes or stages and nothing else. There used to be a pop-up ad every stage, but the devs actually listened to reviews and eventually got rid of them, so that's also nice. The game is a combination of a visual novel for the story and a turn-based card game for the gameplay, where you move on a board game and fight enemies. The story is genuinely well thought out, has actual emotional arcs, and sometimes even outsmarted me. Not all the dialogue are winners, and if you don't enjoy watching friends hang out with each other, you're going to think the writing is cringe like this guy. The plot has a lot of moving parts, but I still found it to be straightforward enough to be enjoyable. I generally was also pretty satisfied with the gameplay. While I personally barely play these kinds of games, I still found that the game manages to pull out being fairly simple without being mind-numbing, eventually challenging without being frustrating, well, most of the time, and most importantly, actually consistently entertaining enough to keep playing to the end. My experience was also especially helped by the nice looking art style, the expressive character animations, the memorable sound design, and very especially the banger music. I also like how instead of any high budget or fancy looking cutscenes, they just have chibi versions of the characters doing goofy animations on the isometric map, and it honestly works just as fine and actually adds to the game's charm and originality. That all being said, remember this is still a mobile game, so there are two things that you should look out for that, while honestly not really abusive, can be at worst inconvenient. The first is the energy system or ticket system. It takes one ticket to enter a stage you haven't been yet, put a pin on that, and you have a maximum of 6 tickets where each ticket replenishes every 40 minutes. And remember, there are 100 total stages, so you know, it's gonna take a while to beat the game if you're not paying up. On my end, without paying, it took me 2 months of regularly paying to reach the end. I'm honestly pretty privileged to have plenty of free time to waste, so you may need a larger time commitment to beat this game, which I get that's not your thing. There's no one-time fee to bypass the ticket system entirely, which is a shame. I do appreciate that the game is divided up into multiple stages. That way, when you run out of tickets, you at least run out during a good closing point at the end of a stage to come back later, instead of in the middle of a long continuous story. Back to that pinpoint, there is one thing this game does that's actually really good. You can play any stage you've already been without any ticket costs at all. This is really nice for revisiting past stages, especially to collect all the currencies, which is the second thing you have to look out for. You are going to need the currencies to unlock and upgrade cards at this skill tree. You can very easily get by using the starter cards for the first several stages, but the game's difficulty will sure as hell increase, so you can't afford the skill tree forever. You can buy the currencies as microtransactions or watch ads for some coins, but I find it very doable to beat the game with like even less than half of the free stage currencies used. I wish resetting the skill tree didn't have a cost, because I would have liked to experiment with different cards freely, but it's not a big deal. So, while this game inherently has these flaws as a free-to-play mobile game, I honestly still find it way less restrictive and cash grabby than other mobile games, which in turn makes it way easier for me to recommend this game. There's also other things I like to nitpick unrelated to being a mobile game that I think you should know. My least favorite part about the board game sections is whenever you encounter a roundabout where you have to purely rely on RNG to both draw the right cards and roll the right dice number just so you can reach this one specific tile to then break free of the roundabout to progress. I don't mind this when I have enough turns to waste, but if I don't, it's just frustrating because it's literally just luck that's making me lose multiple times. At the combat system's worst, you just keep spamming card with big number to win, but at its best, especially as the game goes on, you have to actually think about what cards to use to both survive and deal enough damage. It's these challenging moments to me that make the combat very worth it. With the story, I think it's just a little bit too slow. I think the game does a good job justifying most stages' existence by either progressing the plot or giving character depth, but I still think the game's total runtime of like 12 hours could be trimmed just a bit. There's also a certain character that I genuinely like, but I think gets forgiven a little too easily. On the one hand, the writers do a fine job justifying why they're forgiven, but on the other hand, they're a murderer. Not a very innocent people, but not really guilty ones either. There's also some minor grammar and punctuation mistakes here and there, but given that the developer's native language clearly isn't English and we still get good lines more often than not, I'll let it slide. The game is also a prequel to another game Mason released in 2017 called Jekyll and Hyde, which I suggest is a direct adaptation of Stevenson's original story. If I didn't tell you this, you would never know playing Hyde Seek like I did. That's how well written this story is to be as standalone as possible. I actually liked Hyde Seek so much that I bought and also played Jekyll and Hyde, and honestly, I still enjoyed Hyde Seek way more. When I'm gonna turn this into a review of Jekyll and Hyde, instead I'll just say the jump in quality in almost every aspect imaginable from that game to this game is a testament to how good Mason has gotten. You don't need to play Jekyll and Hyde to understand what's going on in Hyde and Seek, and you don't even need to play Jekyll and Hyde after Hyde and Seek. The ending basically sums up what happens in Jekyll and Hyde almost seamlessly without being off-putting. I will say that in stage 98, after it wraps up all of Hyde and Seek's plot threads and characters in a satisfying way, the last third of it just suddenly introduces an entirely new mini-plot that takes up the very last two stages, and it feels really disconnected from everything leading up to this point. Without spoiling, I think the writers were trying to find an excuse to explore a certain point in time after the stories of both games ended. It all leads up to the game's very last moment, which I generally like as a great send-off, but how it got to that moment was pretty contrived. Okay, that's enough of being critical of the game. I do actually love Hyde and Seek and really want other people to not only be aware this game exists, but to consider playing it for themselves. Besides Jekyll and Hyde, I haven't played Mason's other games yet, but they do look like a promising indie developer to check out and also support yourself if you're into story-heavy games. I am really grateful I was just randomly scrolling to the App Store last year, because I would otherwise have never found this game at all. It generally makes me hopeful that there are other hidden gems out there like this game that I haven't found yet, and I look forward to discovering them like Hyde and Seek. It's almost like a game of hide and seek.